was in the backyard, I just cleaned off the grill. And the phone rang, so I went and picked it up. He identified himself as Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, and he told me that it's about your daughter. And then he said, I really don't want to tell you this over the phone. It took everything in my body at that moment in time not to react. And I called my wife. I said, babe, come home. And she said, what's wrong? I said, no, I just want you to come home.
We have a body. It's on God's property. It's at a church. Was she brought here? Did she meet someone here? Is it satanic driven, or somebody is just trying to send us a message? You definitely want to find out who did it and why, and that's our job. God doesn't like ugly, but we just need to give ugly a name. Like a lot of big cities, Charlotte, North Carolina has its share of homicides. For 22 years, I've worked over 800 homicide cases on the streets of Charlotte. I'm Gary McFadden, a former homicide detective, now the sheriff. I work with Charlotte's finest solving these cases.
July 15, 2005, 9:40 a.m. Kenyatta Patterson is a responsible young mother, juggling a job, school, and her 2 children. When she is 40 minutes late for work, co-workers try in vain to reach her.
She worked a job at Olympic High School here in Mecklenburg County. She was a teacher's assistant.
She wasn't answering the phone. She wasn't answering texts. Kenyatta was a very responsible woman, and this was out of her character, not normal for her not showing up to work on time.
Just a few hours later, police are called to a church in the middle-class neighborhood of Steel Creek.
There was a woman who worked at that church, and she noticed a car. She began to notice that there was nobody coming to the car, and she thought that was a little odd. And so she called the police.
An officer with Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department went out to check on just an abandoned car behind a church. This would be your routine call that we get every day, every hour, every year.
He went up to the car at first, looked around the car, saw there was a woman's pocketbook, but did not see a woman. So he decided to open up the car and look in, and when he reached in, he saw in his peripheral vision a female body.
Soon, the church parking lot is transformed into a taped-off crime scene.
Hello, Detective.
Patty?
Well, by the time that I got the call, I already knew that there was a deceased female that had been found near her car.
Hey, Detective. Officer. What time did you find her here?
I'd say it was just about 11:30.
Did you see anyone else out here when you pulled up?
No, no one at all. Let me know if you need anything else.
I appreciate it.
First thing that my mind goes to is that's somebody's child. That's somebody's baby. That's somebody's mother. People love her. And now she's been taken away senselessly.
She was naked from the waist down. Her panties were found near to her body.
She had been there for a while. She was in complete rigor, which takes anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. She had some bruising on her face near her eye, and both of her eyes were blackened. You could see ligature markings on her neck. Just on that one side, you can see that. So our first indication there is that she's been strangled.
Investigators also note that some of her acrylic nails have been broken off.
It's very hard to break them, which indicates that she was fighting for her life.
The victim is quickly identified.
So when they ran the plates of the car came back registered to a Kenyatta Patterson.
Police hunt for any clues left behind in Kenyatta's car.
So we have the car with very little evidence. We don't have any broken glass, we don't have any blood, we don't have a huge sign of a struggle that we can determine inside the car. So what we're trying to determine, how does this all come together and how this became a murder? How did she get to the scene? Was she brought to the scene? Did she want just a place to pray and for comfort, and someone spotted her there and then murdered her? So one of the first people that we need to talk to is to the pastor of the church. If Kenyatta is connected to the church, what does he know? What's going on in his congregation? Is she a member? Does he know the victim? You would be surprised what a pastor would know about his flock.
Detectives question the pastor.
No. I've never heard of that name before.
So it turns out Kenyatta was not a member of this church. But we have to wonder, was someone trying to send us a message? And is this something that we are missing, but it's still a puzzling, why did it happen on God's property?
As investigators dig into the case, they quickly realize Kenyatta may not be the only victim.
They made some phone calls and found out very quickly that she had 2 children that were unaccounted for.
Detectives now fear that those children, Javon and Tiana, could also be in danger.
The question is, where are those kids? Were those kids with her when this happened? And if someone is willing to do harm to the mother, there's no telling what they might do to the kids.
Just 2 hours into the investigation, at least one part of this mystery is solved.
They discovered that the kids were staying with their grandfather, and so they were okay, they were safe.
But then, Kenyatta's father, Mike Watkins, gets the heartbreaking news at his house in Michigan.
I had just cleaned off the grill. I was gonna throw some hamburgers and hot dogs on the grill for the kids. And the phone rang, so I went and picked it up. He identified himself as Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. And then he said, I really don't want to tell you this over the phone. He told me that she had been murdered. It took everything in my body at that moment in time not to react because all those kids were there. You know, as hard as it was on me, I did not want to tell those babies.
Kenyatta Patterson was 31 years old. She had grown up on military bases with a brother and a sister.
She was my older sister, and when I think of Kenyatta, I think of warmth, gentle, kind, caring, loving, supportive. From my earliest memories, that's how my sister always was. One of the coolest people I've ever met in my entire life. Some of the things she would talk about, you know, she wanted to do when she'd get older. I remember she was in gymnastics for a little while. She wanted to be a gymnast. She was learning to play the flute. You know, she said for a little while, you know, she wanted to do that. But the main staple, you know, was she said that she did want to have a family of her own someday.
Yeah, she was always a good student. She, you know, she was very conscientious about education, and she had plans moving forward, you know, not to stop and go on and study. She was here actually in Charlotte going to UNC studying nursing because she wanted to take care of autistic children. That was her goal, her mission. So, you know, it didn't come overnight. It was something that was always in her, you know.
In 1993, Kenyatta married James Patterson, an Air Force enlisted man.
She married the first man that she had ever been with. Her husband and her had 2 children.
Oh, that was everything to her. Javon and Tiana were everything to her.
But not long after the couple's 10-year anniversary, the marriage fizzled.
They were separated. Ultimately, she decided that relationship had gone as far as it could go, and it was time to try to get on with her life.
As Kenyatta's family struggles to cope with their loss, her body is sent to the medical examiner for an autopsy. Meanwhile, investigators ramp up their search for her killer.
We went out to her apartment, basically to see if there was any disturbance in there that might lead you to believe somebody had been in her house or took her against her will. If there was any blood or anything in the house.
Look at this place. It's spotless.
Pretty clean for 2 kids.
There was nothing turned over. There was no knives out or books on the floor. And it was just a modest little apartment. It's very neat, clean. Everything organized, orderly.
And with valuables still present, it doesn't look like burglary was the motive for murder. Detectives look at the people closest to Kenyatta, beginning with her ex-husband.
I'll be damned. Y'all gonna want to come take a look at this.
So looking in Kenyatta's ex-husband's file, he did have some prior arrests.
Have some priors.
Now, this brother was definitely not a Boy Scout.
In this case, the very month before this murder, he was charged with assaulting her. In September of the year before the murder, he was charged with assaulting her then.
Within hours of discovering her body, Kenyatta Patterson's ex-husband is now detectives' prime suspect. But they soon realize he's already one step ahead of the law. James Patterson is the prime suspect in his ex-wife Kenyatta's murder.
He's got 3 priors. Assault.
You know, she told me, you know, that they were having problems. We never discussed what it all was about or anything like that. She may have spoke with her sisters or you know, my wife even, but, you know, it was nothing that me and her would discuss. And probably because I've always told them that, you know, that they were adults. You know, and, you know, sometimes you have to make adult decisions about your own life. I said, but I always got your back. And she did come in at one point in time to Detroit with the kids and was going to stay. You know, she had left him, and then she decided that she'd go back to North Carolina, you know, so that, you know, the kids would have their father. You know, somewhere, you know, even if they weren't living together, they'd be with their father. So, once again, it was the kids and, you know, but you know, those were her decisions. And I just, whatever you want to do, babe, I'll back you up, you know.
I mean, that's got to be enough. We should bring him back in.
He did have some prior arrests. So we need to talk to him, and we need to talk to him now.
But police can't find him anywhere.
We're looking for a James Patterson. We're told he works here?
Yeah, but to tell you the truth, I haven't seen him in a while.
So when you get a suspect, you want to catch him quickly, because if he gets wind, I'm looking for him, likelihood, he'll leave town.
If you see him around or talk to him, give us a call.
He hasn't called. He hasn't wrote us. He hasn't sent a text message. Nobody's seen him. Why isn't he coming in and talk to us? Why do he want to clear his name? Is he ducking? Is he getting rid of evidence? We need to know why he's not coming in to talk to us about his ex-wife, the mother of his kids.
Detectives turned to Kenyatta's friends to learn more about her marriage to James.
He was her first love, you know? They met some time ago and they had been together for a while. I mean, they had their differences, but what couple doesn't? But to be honest, he did have his demons.
What kind of demons?
He got into drugs, and Kenyatta couldn't stand it. It really caused a lot of problems between them.
Kenyatta and her husband had been involved for a very long time. But, you know, they had their share of ups and downs.
They would fight, they would fuss, break up, get back together. A lot of arguments, a lot of breakup, a lot of arguments, a lot of breakup. And so we understand that it was a very volatile, abusive relationship. Rinse and repeat.
The cops had to come out a time or two and pay them a visit because of this history of violence.
Finally, she just couldn't take it anymore. It was time to get out. I mean, she tried, believe me, she tried to make it work as long as she could. But she got scared for her kids, you know? And at that point, she just couldn't take it anymore.
Kenyatta and James split up, but she didn't want her children completely cut off from their dad. So she found a place to live close to James. But now Kenyatta is dead, and her ex is suddenly hard to find. While the search continues, Detective McFadden heads over to Kenyatta's apartment complex.
I've learned in my years of homicide, neighbors are the most valuable people that you can come in contact with. They see things that nobody else sees, and they're just waiting to tell somebody, and I want to be that person that they tell. We need to know what they know. When I first pull up, there was no kids playing in the parking lot. There's nobody mingling in the parking lot. Nobody's opening the curtains. The area was completely abandoned.
But one resident does answer her door.
I said, "Hi, I'm Gary McFadden with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Homicide Unit." She was very polite.
Please come in.
And she invited me in her home.
So I'm Thelma, and this is my son, Leon. He's my youngest.
She's taking care of her son who's disabled. And then her other son comes in occasionally and helps her.
Mrs. Thelma also said she was about to make herself and her son lunch. She said, "I will also make you a sandwich if you would like one." And I accepted. I'm gonna have to tell you, don't know what she put on it, don't know what kind of spread she had on the bread, but it was one of the best roast beef sandwiches I ever had. So you have to connect with them. Whatever you like, I like. Making that connection is very important. Once you make that connection, they will tell you anything and everything that you need to know.
McFadden then shows Thelma a photo of Kenyatta.
She recognizes the photograph, and she sees her in the hallways, and they may say hi. It's not like they have any kind of a real relationship or anything like that.
Yeah, but I didn't know her well. She seems busy. We're all just so busy these days, Detective.
All she knew is that Kenyatta was a single mother with 2 small kids. That's all she could tell me.
I wish I could be more helpful, Detective.
And of course, during our conversation, she said she loved crime TV. She loved those shows. Here's a woman who loved crime TV, but not crime came to her door that day.
The fact that Kenyatta's been murdered is of great concern to her. And one of the things that she asked from Gary is just to be kept apprised of what's going on in the investigation, because it worried her just like it would worry any decent human being.
McFadden goes door to door and questions every other neighbor he can find. As with Thelma, it seems no one knows much about the single mom. One day after Kenyatta's murder, the autopsy results are in.
The medical examiner told us the cause of death was strangulation. We came to that conclusion on the crime scene because we didn't find any wounds that would suggest that she was shot or stabbed.
And there's more.
It was determined that the victim had been sexually assaulted, and the suspect left DNA on the victim. If the ex-husband DNA matches the DNA on the crime scene, boom, game over, he's our guy.
Investigators looking for Kenyatta Patterson's killer have zeroed in on her ex-husband, James, who was arrested for assaulting her 1 month before the murder.
That number one suspect is Kenyatta's ex-husband. We need to find him, and we need to find him quick.
Anytime you have a female that's murdered, the police go to look into the husband and their relationship.
Meanwhile, the story of the murdered single mom dominates the news in Charlotte.
Kenyatta Patterson was a headline story for a couple of reasons. If you know anything about Charlotte, North Carolina, religion is king here. There are a lot of huge churches. This is the home of the Billy Graham Ministries, so faith means a lot. And to have something this bad happen, as it were, on sacred ground, so to speak, it gets people's attention. Kenyatta Patterson was an everyday woman. She was just an average, ordinary mom. That kind of touches people because it says, you know, this can happen to her. This can kind of happen to anybody.
Finally, 2 days after the murder, Kenyatta's ex-husband resurfaces and says he's ready to meet with investigators.
So we press him hard, I mean really hard. Where were you the day Kenyatta was killed? What were you doing for the last 48 hours? Why you didn't come and talk to us? When did you hear about it? What have you been told? What did you read in the newspaper? Tell us what you know. It is our time because now we finally got him in this box.
Thanks for coming in, James. I know you've really been through a lot. We just want to ask you a few questions to get all this all cleared up.
I'm here. What you want to know?
James, where were you the day that Kenyatta was killed?
What day was that again?
July 15th, morning of.
I don't know. I have no idea.
James tells detectives that he's been holed up in a hotel doing drugs during the days surrounding Kenyatta's disappearance.
I have to tell you, when I first saw this guy, I said, this is him. Case closed, it's a wrap.
Every indicator looked like he was a very viable suspect. He even had scratch marks on him.
What happened there?
Don't know.
He admitted that he had a drug problem at the time, and he didn't have any friends, and that he blamed that on her.
Were there any fights? Did you ever hit her?
Hit her? What? She hit me.
So during the interview, this guy's telling us things that we do not want to hear as a homicide detective. He's trying to make us believe that Kenyatta is the aggressive person in this relationship. She makes him hit her. He's trying to flip the script on us. We don't like it, we're not going for it.
Then, James implicates someone else as Kenyatta's potential killer.
You guys got it all wrong. Have you talked to Johnny?
Who's Johnny?
The guy she's been hanging out with?
Is this guy trying to play us? Or he's just taking us along on this wild goose chase?
I remember he had a UNCC sticker on his car. Kenyatta said that's where she met him, at a college copy shop over near campus.
He's almost knows too much. He's telling us about a car, and he's telling about a bumper sticker, come back to the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, which is a campus, college campus here. He said he believed that this guy, Johnny, worked in some kind of bookstore around the college campus. So you have to wonder, is this our guy? Our number one suspect now is telling us about a number two guy, Johnny. We cannot follow the stuff up. We have to follow it up. Is it really a Johnny, or is it really you?
All right, pal. We're gonna let you go, but first you gotta do something for us.
We don't have any evidence or information to tie him to his ex-wife's death. So what do we have to do? We could probably have to let him go. But before he leaves my box and before he leaves this office, we're gonna have to get a sample of his DNA. You have to remember, a suspect can lie, but the DNA does not lie.
But investigators aren't ruling anyone out until those results come in. All the news coverage leads to a flood of calls from the public, including a familiar name, Kenyatta Patterson's neighbor, Miss Thelma.
Detective, do you have any idea of what happened?
She was incredibly curious about the details of what had happened to Miss Patterson. She wanted to know how she was killed. Then the police told her, ma'am, we can't tell you what her manner of death was. That's something that we have to hold on to during our investigation.
There's one thing I did see.
So Miss Thelma says, there's one thing I forgot to mention. She describes a guy who often came by to visit Kenyatta. But the description was very vague. Could be the husband, could it be the ex-boyfriend, could be somebody totally different. Well, is this Johnny? I'm saying this to myself. Could this be the guy, Johnny?
I'll let you know if I see him again. Thank you, Detective.
Detectives hit the university campus to try and hunt down Johnny, the man Kenyatta's ex-husband first told them about.
So in talking to one of Kenyatta's friends, lo and behold, she did remember a guy named Johnny.
And it turns out Kenyatta's ex was right about where he worked.
Johnny worked at the copy shop, and that is where he and Kenyatta kind of met and struck up a friendship because Kenyatta was going to school out that way.
How can I help you? Well, we're looking for information on a case regarding your friend, Kenyatta.
Kenyatta?
Mm-hmm.
What happened with Kenyatta?
What is this relationship? Is it a romantic relationship or just a friendship?
We heard you were dating.
No, we're good friends, we're study friends, but we've never dated.
They kind of go out and do things together, but never as a romantic relationship, always a friendship.
Detectives bring Johnny Moulton in for questioning.
Watching Johnny's body language and also listening to what he was saying, it made us question him even more. His body language was giving us a different answer than his mouth. When a person appears to be lying, you have to ask yourself, what are they hiding and why are they lying?
Johnny, we found Kenyatta murdered next to a church on Irwin Road.
Murdered? Nah, it can't be.
As a homicide detective, we have to think, is this guy really acting or is he really upset? You know, I say tears are the emotional part of your heart, but still, we need to know, are you a suspect or you just acting? We don't know at this point, and everybody's a suspect until we put somebody on the hook.
We heard you two were close.
Yeah, we were. We were close friends. We talked a lot. She was gorgeous.
Apparently, Johnny had wanted more than a friendship with Kenyatta.
How long have you known Kenyatta? He says, about 3 or 4 months, no longer than that. Just kind of met her, thought she was attractive, and, you know, he wanted to date her. So as the conversation went on into a little bit deeper about everything, Johnny finally says, hey, look, she pretty much told me that she didn't want a relationship with anybody, and her focus now was raising her 2 children.
Just as Kenyatta's ex-husband, James, had previously fingered Johnny as the killer.
Have you talked to Johnny?
Johnny points right back at James.
She said he hit her. That's what you should be talking about. James, yeah, he was upset because me and her were getting along.
He said Kenyatta did confide in him about their relationship. It was very volatile. They had a lot of confrontations in their marriage, and because of that, Johnny believed that the ex-husband should be a prime suspect in this case.
So who's lying? and who is telling the truth. Like James, Johnny gives investigators permission to take a DNA sample.
When there is a suspect, it's a process of elimination. And in any homicide case, it's like hunting. You have to find the pieces of the puzzle. That's our job, is to complete the puzzle. And we have to take all the pieces and see what fits and what doesn't fit.
While investigators wait for DNA lab results, Kenyatta's grieving family lays her to rest.
There was nothing that you could say to anybody to relieve any pain, anguish, or anything like that. And I think Javon took it really hard because I know he was angry that his mom and dad weren't together. The anguish in their voices and you know.
My sister was very loved, and seeing so many people there for her, it warmed my heart, because all it meant was that she had touched others in their lives the way she touched mine. Everybody was in tears, even the funeral home people who didn't even know her, they were crying. And it made me feel real fortunate that I got to know her my whole life. Not everybody there knew her as long as I did.
As the family mourns, the DNA results come back. And when they do, investigators are in for a shock.
Lo and behold, neither Kenyatta's ex-husband or Johnny matched the DNA on the crime scene. You can run down every lead, but sometimes it just comes to a dead end.
It's clear detectives have to cast a wider net, so they scour the criminal database for any leads.
They began to do a sexual predator type of search.
In working homicide, we also have to connect with other units to help us with the case. So we connected with the sexual assault unit with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. And we found out that in 2005, we had over 250 sexual assaults in the city. So we don't know what we have. We don't know if we have a serial rapist or not.
Because Kenyatta had been sexually assaulted, you want to look at who might be responsible for that. You're going to check if there's anybody who might fit the bill.
But investigators could spend countless hours looking at hundreds of suspects. They decide to start their search close to where Kenyatta lived. And finally, they get a hit. An ex-con named Derek Harris, who lives right in Kenyatta's neighborhood.
Not only does he have a record, but he has a record for sexually assaulting women, and he was convicted of killing one.
In 1988, Derek Harris had been convicted of rape and murder by strangulation. He served 5 years and was paroled in 1993.
After Mr. Harris got out of prison, he was convicted of another sex-related offense in 2003.
A person who has been convicted not only of rape, but also of murder. Sound familiar? That's exactly what happened in this case. So he jumps to the top of the suspect list immediately.
What detectives discover next blows the case wide open.
The last known address that we had for Derek Harris was from a 2003 arrest. I knew that address had looked familiar, and we just couldn't believe what we were seeing.
Right there in the backyard, so to speak, is Derek Harris. Mr. Harris fits the pattern here perfectly, so this is someone that police want to talk to, and they want to talk to right away.
The address put Derek Harris right next door to Kenyatta Patterson. That's when it all clicked. Derek Harris and Thelma Harris.
I wish I could be more helpful, Detective.
We knew that she had one son who lived with her that was disabled, but she also had another son that we knew very little about.
Do you have any idea of what happened?
Miss Thelma seemed very interested in this case, and I thought that it was because she was interested in the crime shows. You have to wonder if she ever wondered if her son could have been involved. Derek Harris's DNA was already on file from a previous conviction. We ran his DNA against the unknown profile that was collected from the scene.
With those results pending, detectives revisit the Harris's apartment.
Hello, detectives. I guess you have some updates?
Might be closer than anyone thought.
Derek Harris is now our suspect, and his mother lives right next door to Kenyatta Patterson, and from our investigation, he was always in and out of the apartment.
To have a convicted murderer, sex offender living across the hall from you and for you not to know, I don't think that happens every day.
Well, are you guys hungry? Can I fix you a sandwich?
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
You sure?
Yeah.
So now you go to the big dance, where you have to talk to a mother about what she knows, but don't let her know that her son is the #1 suspect.
Who's that?
Oh, this is my other son, Derek. He's a sweetheart. He helps me out with his brother.
In talking with Mrs. Harris, she informed me that Derek was a home health care aide who would often help her with his brother.
Oh, my goodness. Speak of the devil, here he is. Sweetheart.
So that meant that he was at the house all the time. He would have had an opportunity to see Kenyatta coming and going.
Sweetheart, I'd like you to meet the detectives.
Mrs. Harris been asking me about this case all along, and I'm trying to read her. Did she know more?
They're just trying to get some information on, well, I guess he's a little busy right now.
Derek Harris would never engage in a conversation. He would never engage in eye contact, and he was very reluctant to be in the same room that I'm in while at his mother's apartment.
I don't live here. I just come by to help out.
He repeatedly said he had a girlfriend that he lived with and would just go to his mother's house every day to help out with his brother.
When I was showing Derek the picture of Kenyatta, he didn't want to look at the picture, he didn't want to be cooperative, and he didn't want anything to do with this case. Are you hiding something? Or are you just nervous because we're the police and we're talking about a homicide?
Detectives leave the Harris apartment, long on suspicion, but still short on proof. "12 days into the investigation, the tide's about to turn.
In homicide, we have a saying.
The DNA results are back.
DNA stands for don't need to ask.
Derek Harris's DNA is a match to the sample taken from Kenyatta's body.
He denied to Kingdom Come that he knew her, had anything to do with her, that he had even seen her before. So there is no reason for his DNA to be anywhere near that body, and it is a match, so they know he's their guy at that point.
In this case, the profile match was that of Derek Harris. A lot of joy, a lot of happiness, and I'm like, yeah, we finally got you. God answered my prayers. Now we need to get Derek Harris off the streets.
Detectives have the challenging task of picking up Derek Harris at his mother's apartment.
It's hard to imagine that she could have been completely blindsided just simply because of the fact of what he had been convicted of before, because this is a person who had already spent time in prison. I'm sure, though, she probably didn't want to believe it.
We zeroed in on Derek Harris because of his DNA. DNA does not lie, and he did it.
He never admitted to killing Miss Patterson. He accused the police of targeting him because of his prior history with sex crimes and with murder.
When I talked to Mrs. Harris, she was absolutely devastated. She said that she often thought about it in the back of her mind, could her son be involved? But she didn't want to believe it. This was truly devastating for her. It was probably one of the most difficult moments in my career.
Despite his denial, Derek Harris is charged with Kenyatta Patterson's murder.
I wanted to get a baseball bat and bust my way into jail and just beat him to death. You know, there was no relief. There was just more anger. I wanted to look at who this piece of crap was and kill him.
Harris eventually pleads guilty and is sentenced to a minimum of 46 years in prison. Because Derek Harris was one of Kenyatta's neighbors, he would have been a familiar face to the young mother.
We'll never know what happened because Derek never gave us details. My theory is that Derek asked Kenyatta for a ride somewhere. Being the kind, loving person that she is, she took him. Derek kidnapped her and took her to this isolated location, which is at the back of the church. We believe that Kenyatta put up a fight.
Leave me alone! Leave me alone!
But during that fight, Derek sexually assaulted her and then strangled her to death. Leaving her lifeless body on the ground and went back to his mother's apartment. Kenyatta giving him that ride cost her her life.
They say it's justice served, but in my heart, it's really not. Somebody that would do that just doesn't deserve breath in their body. I'm sorry. That's just, they're evil, and evil walks among us all the time.
When you see a young woman who was responsible for bringing up 2 little kids, this is the type of case that sticks in your heart and your head as a prosecutor, and you don't forget them.
My niece and nephew today, they're both college graduates, good careers. She would be extremely pleased.
May 16th, her birthday, you don't forget those dates, you know, and Christmas and, you know, these type of things. You just don't forget them. We just learn how to live our lives with that missing piece. You just learn to go on.
Kenyatta was a very loving mother, very kind-hearted person. She's doing everything that she can to survive. Here's a beautiful woman, lost her life. We have to take that moment to ourselves to say, what a tragedy